if I put on my pure scientist hat, as opposed to my American scientist hat, pure scientist hat, I say, if we don't build the lab, somebody else will, and the science will get discovered. If we don't explore the moon, somebody else will. It will get discovered. That's one of the hallmarks of science that distinguishes it from art. In science, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Whereas in art, if Beethoven didn't compose the Ninth Symphony, no one else before or after is going to compose the Ninth Symphony that he composed. No one else is going to paint Starry Night by Van Gogh. So science, when done properly, is never owned by one nation or another. So that's what happened with particle physics in America. We were building the largest super collider there ever was, the superconducting super collider, to be based in Texas. 200-mile circumference ring. We would accelerate particles, smash them, and explore the conditions that were common in the early universe. That budget got canceled by Congress as we were winding down out of the Cold War. So no longer was the physicist the darling of the sciences, the way they were after the Second World War going into the Cold War, because it was the innovations of physicists that created the bomb in the Manhattan Project. Physics basically ended the war. So without a war, certainly without a Cold War, there's a question as to what the value of the super collider was to the nation. Now, I don't know how many people you get to admit that fact, but my read of history is that when nations spend huge amounts of money on things, it's hardly ever for the pure value of exploration. There's usually secondary motives, primary motives that are presented secondarily, like military, like economics, or some other sort of factor that matters to national security. So what happened? Europe took up the task. So at CERN, which is the acronym for the super collider, the European Consortium Super Collider in Switzerland, they now have the most powerful collider in the world. And they're the ones who are going to be probing the conditions near the Big Bang, not us. So my pure scientist hat is, I don't care who does it as long as it's done, as long as somebody does it. The American scientist in me, because I'm born and raised in America and I care deeply for this nation, is I kind of prefer that we did it, because I know we can. If we weren't wealthy, or if we had I'd say, now's not the time. Let some other wealthier, more powerful nation do it than us. But is it time for me to say that? Are we really that poor? Are we really that without means? A $3 trillion budget to spend. It's about the balance of that portfolio of spending that makes a nation. How much do you spend on art, healthcare, poverty, research and development, the veterans, military? You lay out the portfolio, that is the country that you live in. And $3 trillion is enough to buy, as far as I'm concerned, anything we want, anything we choose to. And so, I wish it were here, because if we make it here, the opportunities arise here.
If Mars was wet and fertile before Earth was, as all evidence suggests, and if Mars had life before Earth had life, it is possible for there to have been bacterial stowaways in the nooks and crannies of the rocks that were cast into space. There's some hardy bacteria that we already know exists on Earth. Survives extreme temperatures, pressures, freeze-dried, reconstituted, radiation. The hostile environment of space would be nothing to some of these bacteria. It may be that life on Earth was seeded by bacterial stowaways on rocks that were cast free from Mars. This is a plausible scenario that's called panspermia, the transference of life from one planet to the next. If that's the case, that makes all of us descendants of Martians. That's one of them. To alert you in advance. Now, let me give you a disturbing thought. A fascinatingly disturbing thought, and we'll leave you on that note. If you look at our closest genetic relative to human beings, it would be the chimpanzee. We share like 98+% identical DNA. We are smarter than a chimpanzee. So let's invent a measure of intelligence that make humans unique. Let's say intelligence is your ability to like compose poetry, symphonies, do art, math, and science. That's it, okay? Let's make that as the arbitrary definition of intelligence for the moment. Chimps can't do any of that. Yet we share 98, 99% identical DNA, okay? The most brilliant chimp there ever was maybe can do a little bit of sign language. Well, our toddlers can do that. Toddlers. So, here's what concerns me deeply. Everything that we are that distinguishes us from chimps emerges from that 1% difference in DNA. It has to, because that's the difference. The Hubble telescope, these grand, that's in that 1%. Maybe everything that we are that is not the chimp is not as smart compared to the chimp as we tell ourselves it is. Maybe the difference between constructing and launching a Hubble telescope and a chimp combining two finger motions as sign language, maybe that difference is not all that great. We tell ourselves it is, just the same way we label our books optical illusions. We tell ourselves it's a lot. Maybe it's almost nothing. How would we decide that? Imagine another life form that's 1% different from us in the direction that we are different from the chimp. Think about that. We got 1% difference and we're building the Hubble telescope. Go another 1%. What are we to they? We would be drooling, blithering idiots in their presence. That's what we would be. They would take Stephen Hawking and roll him in front of their primate researchers and say, well, this one is like the most brilliant among them because he can do sort of astrophysics in his head. Oh, isn't that cute? Little Johnny can do that too. Oh, that's so nice. In fact, Johnny just did that. Let me get it. It's on the refrigerator door. Here he is. He did it in his elementary school class. Think about how smart they would be. Quantum mechanics would be intuitive to their toddlers. Whole symphonies would be written by their children, and like I said, just put up on the refrigerator door the way our pasta collages are on our refrigerator doors. So the notion that we're going to find some intelligent life and have a conversation with it? When was the last time you stopped to have a conversation with a worm? Or a bird? Although you might have had a conversation, but I don't think you expected an answer, all right? So we don't have conversations with any other species on Earth with whom we have DNA in common. To believe that some intelligent other species is going to be interested in us enough to have a conversation? They'll look at our Hubble telescope and say, oh, isn't that quaint? Look at what they're doing. So I lay awake at nights wondering whether simply we as a species are simply too stupid to figure out the universe that we're investigating. And maybe we need some other species 1% smarter than we are, for which string theory would be intuitive, for which all the greatest mysteries of the universe, from dark matter, dark energy, the origins of life, and all the frontiers of our thoughts would be something that they would just self-intuit. I'm jealous of that possibility.